Welcome back. Today we're going to get going on welding in that passenger side torque box. Let's get at it. All right, I've been fitting in the lower torque box. As if you recall last video, I got the floor support parallel with the frame rail front and back, so I was happy with that. And I'm running into, this shouldn't surprise anyone, a little interference getting this torque box in. Let me show you what I'm looking at. Okay, I've got the torque box held in place. The jack is just here just to hold it there so I don't, have to use three hands. So this flange right here needs to go on the other side of this pinch weld. And it's flush up against on this side. So that means this needs to go, see if I can get a good angle for you there. This needs to go on the other side of this pinch weld there. So I can make that happen. I can take a pry bar and I can force this over and force it up into there. The problem is when I do that, it pulls the entire rocker panel out a good deal and pulls it out away from where it goes on the car. And I don't want to do that. I think it's good where it is. I have measured floor support to floor support, and they're within a 1/16 of where they need to be. Excuse me. And my rocker is perfectly parallel with my floor support. I think this should fit up in place, or needs to eventually fit up in place with everything where it is. I don't want to go pull this out a 1/4 inch to try to make it fit in there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that it's where it needs to be on this end, and it's pulled all the way over against the frame rail where it needs to be. And then I think I'm going to do similar to what I did on the other side with a different flange. I'm going to split this and then bring it to where it needs to go on the other side of this pinch weld. That sounds like the right approach to me. Okay, I went ahead and took a measurement from this part of the torque box out to the edge of the flange and measured how far I needed to bring it in. Made a split all the way down, left a little material at the end here. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and tack weld here, maybe put a couple of tacks there, just enough to hold it, and then finish the split and make sure it all moves over the amount I need it to, and then go ahead and weld the entirety. Hopefully it blends up nicely and works. Okay, there's the bead laid down. I'm gonna grind it off. See, I'm sure I'll have some to clean up. Once I touch up any spots here, I'll flip it over, make sure that I got good penetration all the way through, and I don't think I'll have to lay a bead on the other side, but we'll see. Okay, here's the end result of that weld. Because this is going to be on the inside of the torque box, I am not going to grind it all the way down. I just wanted to grind it enough to make sure I didn't have any gaps or was missing anything in the seam. If you bear with me while I flip it over, you can see it's actually heat affected all the way through, so I'm pretty happy with that. I was originally thinking I'll grind this down and weld on this side as well. I don't think I need to. I think we've got plenty of metal there, and it went through far enough, so I'm good with it. Okay, I've got the lower torque box fitted up in place. Just the most gentle little prying out of that lower flange, and it popped right in there. You can see it's just about, maybe you could see, it's just about flush against there. A little clamping and should pull it right in. There's a spot where I split it and welded it. The only point of concern I see right now, I don't know if you can see, there's a gap right there going through to the other side. And I can see, we'll see if I can zoom in a little bit. See that little flange right there? It is bent out a little bit and it's interfering with this. It's not the frame rail, it's the, well, it's the something. It's the sheet metal on the inside of the engine bay that's goes above the frame rail. So I'm gonna take it back down, just bend that flange a little bit, and I think that's going to eliminate that slight gap there. So yeah, I am pretty happy with how this is fitting up. You know, nothing fits right the first time, especially on a part like this that didn't come with the car. So it's had half a century of things flexing around and potentially an accident that happened. So it's not a surprise. It required a little bit of tweaking, but I'm really happy so far. So I figured I'd take a second and explain something. Yeah, a buddy of mine was watching one of my videos and he said, yeah, I'm loving the video, but I'm still not sure what a torque box is when I did the one on the driver's side. So I figured I'd take a second and kind of explain what it is and where it sits and why it's there. So if you can see, I'm currently seated where the passenger would be. So here's the driver's side. I'm sitting right on the floor, or the seat support, seat riser. And there are a couple of structural things, right? So we've got the frame rail going up from here up to basically the front of the car through the engine bay. Attached to that is the floor support that we just put in. So that kind of makes one long piece. And then between there, you've got the transmission cross member. So that ties together your two frame rails, one on either side, to that. Completely separately, you've got the outer rocker going all the way back, and that goes from basically the door hinge a little forward to the door hinge, and that goes all the way back to basically the rear seat of the car. So you've got one piece here and one piece here. Now obviously there's other structures. You've got a firewall, you've got the dash going across that all act as one piece to create structure. But there's nothing that ties together this piece and this piece, so they can flex and move independently, right? It's all held together by various sheet metal, being a unibody car. So when you add in this structure, which is the flat part that goes almost parallel to the ground, you've got the vertical part that's the front there, and then when we put in, bear with me, when we put in this top part right about there, that's going to triangulate. It's going to create a nice solid box that's going to be pretty strong, and it's going to also connect to the frame rail, flange there and underneath and vertically, and then similarly with the side of the car, and then weld to the rocker going all the way back. So what this does is this just creates a lot of rigidity. It keeps the two pieces from flexing independently of each other, and just adds strength and structure. So that is my Reader's Digest version of what a torque box does. All right, I've got all my holes drilled. I've got everywhere prepped and welded through that needs to be. An extra hole that wasn't on the manual for funsies. Yeah, let's go ahead and burn this in. Okay, I've got clamp along the flange, bottom flange, clamp along the vertical flange, and the, I guess, other vertical flange. I have floor jack just pressing, making sure that the bottom torque box is up against the floor support there. And then you can't see, but on the inside, I've got one of these long C clamps or vice grip clamps, making sure that the back end of the torque box is also pressed up. So it's nice and flush against the floor support, meeting up at all the points, and I think we're ready to weld. Okay, there it is, all welded in, just the bottom part. We'll tackle the top another time. I wanted to get the bottom in place and made the top up to the bottom this time. Last time I did the other way around. This might be a little easier, we'll see. I'm happy with all the welds, with the exception of these stitch welds along here. It wasn't, I don't know if it was a penetration or setting issue or something. I'm probably going to grind those mostly down and stitch it back up. Yeah, I'm not thrilled with that, but hey, that's the thing with welding. You can always grind it out and start over. Okay, I'm back. I'm determined to knock out the rest of this torque box today. Okay, I think next steps I'm gonna do, I'm gonna fit up the upper side torque box and just kind of test fit, see where it lands, and make a mark on that sidewall there. And I think what I want to do is drill the holes through the sidewall so that I can weld on the other side, and that's going to weld right up against this flange here. This is much thicker metal, so I'll save this as the parent metal that I'm welding to, and yeah, that'll be a lot nicer to weld instead of maneuvering in here. It's always kind of a challenge to get in there. And I'll drill the holes along here. This mates up right against this. And then I'll clean this up, prep it with a weld through primer. And before I go ahead and seal it up, the lower torque box has the EDP coating on there and a fair amount of dust. So what I'll do is I'll scuff all this up with Scotch-Brite and put probably self-etch on there. And similarly up here, I will prep that, and I think I'm going to leave this flange and make the holes in the top of the upper torque box and weld through that way. It's kind of, that one's kind of a either or, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I could either weld it from up above on this side or weld upwards on the other side. I'll think about that. So if you thought this torque box supper was going to go in place without a fight, you clearly haven't been watching me long enough. So let me show you what I got going on. It is up against the flange, frame rail flange up here. So that's, you know, flush up against exactly where it needs to be. The meeting up with the lower torque box here. Once it's pressed in place, these just about meet up perfectly. I might just want to put a little bit of a bend in this to really bring it up snug, but not bad at all here. So I got these two surfaces without any manipulation. They're looking pretty good. If you recall back to when I did the driver's side against the rocker, it was flush and then there was a gap up here. I'm seeing a similar thing. Only difference is it's about 1/8 of an inch. Once I get everything else sorted out, I'll figure out if I want to similarly put a little jog. There is a little bit of a jog here. We'll see if this sidewall will pull in, just maybe with a little pressure on the outside. If not, I can put the joggle in there. That's not my biggest concern. Let me go around to the front and show you what that is. Okay, so haven't touched anything. The two flanges that I showed you before are still up against, and I've got, it comes close here. You're 1/8, 1/16 of an inch away here, not too bad. That gap widens to probably 1/4, 3/8 of an inch on the other end. I'm kicking myself a little bit because if I had done a little more test fitting, I probably could have realized that if I had just bent this piece that way a little bit, everything else could have fit up perfectly, and this would have met with that. That's going to be 10 times as easy to do off the car than on. So that's my own additional work that I'm giving myself. So test fit everything before you put it on. Don't be like me. Just going to get in here with a, gosh, probably big pliers and see if I can enforce this from the bend up, move that as one piece a little further to meet up with where this is. It's a little frustrating, and I have no one to blame but me. All right, let me show you my progress. So I went ahead and got my favorite hammer and a 2x4, little leftover section of 2x4, and I've been massaging, if you will, along here, bending this flange, this entire section from this crease upwards that way to come back and meet. It's welded here, and I guess my welds that I talked about earlier were good enough to hold from here down. So I still do have a gap. It's pretty tight up here. I still do have this gap, and you can see, maybe you can see, I can close that together with my fingers. So that's, I think, as far as I'm gonna take it. I'll go ahead and prep everything, get the holes drilled, and then just clamp it and weld it. And that should be, ideally I'd like it so that it meets up flush with basically no manipulation, but I don't know how much more hammering and banging I can do on this before I start to like actually dent it and put ripples. So this should be more than sufficient. It's going to weld up, it's going to stay put. I mean, if I can do that with my hand, I know I have questionable welds, but I'm pretty sure my welds will be able to hold better than my hand, I hope. Okay, here's what I did. I went ahead and I put a cut just in here. There was the slightest little joggle. I needed about an 1/8 inch more. The sidewall wasn't pulling into here, so not a big deal. I went ahead and made the slit all the way down, and I just put it in my vise, bent it outwards, the whole thing outwards, and then moved the vise up to here, and then just you could use a screwdriver. I just used a little pry bar here, put it in there, put it in the wedge in there like that, and bent it back just to create this little side joggle. And I just test fitted it up, and it fits flush against here on where the rocker panel is, and flush against here where the sideboard is. I'll go ahead and get a little clamp on this and tack weld at a couple places, and then use a backer, copper backer plate, and just fill this in with weld. right, I've got everything prepped. I got holes drilled so I can weld from the outside. I decided to go from the inside to that top flange. Everything, I went ahead and scuffed the EDP coating, put some self-etch primer on there just to cover up any spots of bare metal that I may have missed. Probably overkill, but that's all good. It's my middle name. And got weld through primer on all the spots we'll be welding. The top plate is fully prepped. Got all my holes drilled, and same on the back. I got the primer, self-etch, and weld through. Ready to go. Let's burn the sucker in. Okay, there it is, all welded in. I ground down all my welds. The ones that will be flush up against or have the firewall flush up against, I went ahead and made flat. The ones down here, I just made flat enough to make sure that I had good penetration and the, was a complete weld. That one I didn't even bother. It's actually pretty flat already. The only way someone's gonna see these is if they cut up this floor again, or if they reach around from underneath and feel for them. I'm not worried about these looking perfect. No one's ever going to see them. I ground down all along here, and then let's see if I can show you up here. I didn't get them perfect. If there's any interference with, they're so flat, I don't think there would be, but if there's any interference when I go to put the firewall in, I'll address it then, but I suspect it's good as is. And you can tell I put the self-etch primer over everything. Really, that's just to protect the metal, the bare metal, cover any scratches or scrapes or spots that I missed. Yeah, I'm really happy. It's all in. It looks great, and we're ready to move on. Okay, now that we got both torque boxes in, both floor supports in, let's talk about what's next. I have up there a new firewall. I did decide I'm doing the cowl. I've got a new cowl lower. I'm going to do the cowl, take out the top cowl, take out the lower cowl, remove what's left of the firewall, and do new firewall, new lower cowl. I'm going to try to save, well, we'll see what shape it's in once I get it open, but for now I'm planning on saving the upper cowl. I think it's, from what I've seen, it's not in bad shape. It's possible once I get it off of there, either I mangle it so badly or I get in there and it's rusted to hell. So we'll see. We'll burn that bridge when we come to it. I might be ordering a new cowl. But in order to get to all of that, first we're gonna have to remove the engine. So this will be fun. Another thing I've never done before. I've got a coworker of mine has a lift I'm gonna be borrowing, and I just picked up an engine stand. So that'll be a project for another time. Okay, thanks for sticking with me this far. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Hopefully there's lots more to come.